Well, good evening, and welcome to you. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is a Sunday evening, Sunday the 4th of the 5th, 2025. And and tonight is going to be a discussion on civics and accountability, episode 4 of the discussion that we've been having for a while. We have had the first one with Miss Joanne Simpson, second one with Mr. Matunda McCullough, which was talking about citizenship and civics. Third one was with Miss Professor Rosalie Hamilton, which is on civics and the Constitution. And the fourth one will be with Miss Jeanette Calder from JAMP. And and ladies and gentlemen, one of the most very interesting thing about this topic, it is very interesting at this time, and I believe it is so fundamental in this scope of thing which is happening in Jamaica. Civics and accountability are deeply intertwined in shaping Jamaica's democratic landscape and the quality of its governance. Civic, which encompass knowledge of citizens' rights, responsibilities, and the workings of government, has historically been undervalued in Jamaica's education system, with only about half of Jamaicans have been taught the subject in school. This gap in civic education has contributed to widespread uncertainty about personal rights, responsibilities, and a weakening of the moral and legal fabric of society, as seen in increased lawlessness and disregard for authority. So there's this call for mandatory bit when it comes on to this whole scope of civics. Well, and tonight, without further ado, I'll have Miss Jeanette Calder. Jeanette Calder is the Executive Director of Jamaica Measuring Portal. She will tell you more about that. And without further ado, I'm going to bring her in as we sort of miss a few minutes earlier. And I want to thank persons who are joining me on Instagram, those who are joining me on TikTok, those who are joining me on Facebook, and those who are joining me on YouTube as well. So welcome and thank you very much. Well, good evening, Miss Calder. Make sure I got it right. How are you doing today?
I am doing very well considering where I am and what we're about to do. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of this Sunday evening and us
Sure.
for to deal with the whole aspect of civics and accountability. Tell us a bit about JAMP, the measuring
Ooh,
port in Jamaica, which you are a part of. I realize that the UK is a part of it, and also the US is a part of it as well.
absolutely, absolutely. I'll even just start right there. When I was designing this portal, one of the reasons it's called portal is because we design and develop tools for citizens whereby they can find it easier to engage both government, but in particular the parliament, for the very purpose of holding them to account. And it's a
Yes.
portal and it's online because we wanted to make sure that not only Jamaicans on the island could participate, Silburn, but I have lived off the island. And I
Mm,
remember reading the papers and wanting to contribute and finding it so difficult. So, with the diaspora in mind, JAMP's web portal is there to facilitate making it easy for any
yes.
Jamaican in the diaspora to communicate with their MP or with the parliament on any of the things that they are reading in the newspaper. But what is JAMP basically? Well, it's a 5.5-year-old NGO that is non-partisan. I emphasize that because JAMP was really birthed out of what you could call a housing scandal back in the under the PNP administration. I don't know if you remember it, but it's called the Outer Many scandal that had to
Okay.
do with the NHT using $180 million to buy some entertainment facility. And
Yes.
everybody knows that the NHT is not for that. So that caused a scandal. I saw the difficulty that it was for people to hold the NHT board to account. And I tried to think of how we could come up with a simple way by which citizens who are
Yes.
really and we'll get into it, the employers, the financiers of government, the owners of government assets, it should be easy for us to
Mm,
hold them to account. So JAMP is really about that. Now, I'll close by saying I want to make it clear that it's not about accountability. JAMP is not trying to hold the government and the parliament to account for everything government does. That's a lot.
Yes. Yes.
We are focused on the money. We believe that if we can hold government account for how our money is utilized, then every sector in Jamaica will benefit, and so will every Jamaican. So that's basically it in short.
Thank you so much for that. And for this lecture tonight, and I say it's a lecture, to keep it very tight, because one of the things that I want to achieve is whereby persons can come back to these videos and watch, because the whole aspect of civics in the classroom, they keep saying it's out of the classroom. So I'm saying let's bring it to the people and just use it in different forms, so it may not be the ideal thing, as someone was saying last night, that they need to have a face-to-face interaction, but every mickle make a muckle, as they say.
Fly me over, Silburn. I'll come for the face-to-face. Just fly me over.
Yeah, no? And Michelle Clark is here, and Temi as well. So I'm gonna invite you to lead us on and to have this lecture. I was going to call it Professor Calder.
Oh no.
Yeah, if you and there's we've got a couple of PowerPoints and videos. So if you lead and I'll follow you, Ms. Calder.
All right. I think what I would like to start with, Silburn and viewers, is the key message. We've been around for 5.5 years, but we ourselves learn every day, and the whole idea is, as we learn, we pivot and we share with the citizens. So we have finally crafted what I believe is the message that JAMP has for citizens in particular. And for this discussion on accountability, I want every listener, every viewer to be very clear about the lens through which JAMP is coming with the thoughts I'm going to share. And I can't think of another way to share that except through a video that we just finished about 2 weeks or a week ago. So I'm going to ask Silburn to play it, and then I'll comment on it a little bit, and we jump right in. Thanks, sir.
Okay.
Buildings and land. You are an employer. With every vote, you hire 63 MPs. You are an
Start that from scratch.
You are an owner. You own all public assets.
Did I start it properly there?
No, I don't think we're at the beginning quite. Almost.
Okay, let me get it from there.
That's the end.
That's the end. Okay, that's the end.
You were almost at the beginning, but if you go back to that spot, I think we'll get most of the message. It will be all right.
Okay.
You are an owner. You own all public assets, like public funds, buildings, and land. You are an employer. With every vote, you hire 63 MPs, and you pay their salaries and the salaries of over 100,000 public officials. You are the financier of all roads, schools, healthcare, security. In fact, all government activities are financed by you. To transform our country, we need to change our mindset. Because if we don't, we might end up in Hector's ownership dilemma.
Hector? Boy, you look like you're heading on the clouds, man.
Oh, Athlin. Sorry, I just have a lot on my mind.
Haven't seen you for a good while. How's your new business?
My business? I wouldn't know.
How you mean? You sell it?
No, it's up and running. Bought the building, the equipment, supplies, got the license and permit. I even appointed a board and hired a CEO, CMO, CFO, every O. But
good. Things are going for you, man. So why you look so?
Well, nobody tells me anything.
Wait, I'm not following. Aren't you the owner and chairman of the board?
I get no sales, no marketing, no financial report, nothing. Board meetings are called, decisions are taken. Nobody invites me.
You cannot be serious.
Atlin, I'm here to transfer $1.5 million to the company, and I'm short. I have to send it every 3 months. If not, the board can sue me.
These are your employees. So if you have no idea what's happening and you're just pouring money in, then just fire them and get a new board.
If I could, but I can't. The contract I signed says unless I can prove, say them do crime, missed work 6 days in a row, or they're mad like rat, then I am stuck with them until the contract expires.
So how long is that?
5 years.
5 years? So who prepared that contract?
Attila them same one write it.
Hector, my dear friend, I think I know how you could get out of that contract.
For real? How?
Go to court, tell them exactly what you told me, and plead insanity. With that the story, the judge will surely believe you and release you.
Now, Hector wants what is best for his company, his family, and their future. But he leave himself careless and can't hold his employees to account. But if we not careful, it's the same thing we doing. So we have to start behave like the owners, employers, and financiers we really are. Visit jampja.org and use our free online tools to track how your taxes are spent and to ensure greater accountability from public officials. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the UK International Development and the Embassy of the United States.
Yes. So before we jump in any further, Silburn, you catch the message we're trying to...
Yes.
Yeah. So in a sense, I want everybody who gonna be listening to me about accountability to hear what that message was saying. We are in fact employers of all public officials, including parliamentarians. We're about to vote, and the truth of it is voting is a mechanism to hire. When they knock on our gates, it's a job they're asking for. I want you to remember when we discuss accountability that these are your assets. You own all the assets that they're going to be stewarding and the decisions they're going to be making. Public funds, public buildings, public land, institutions. And last but by no means least, you finance everything they do. So if we think about it in the context of the private sector or our own personal lives, if I have money and I have an asset and I'm going to hire somebody to do a job for me, then goodness gracious, Silver, the issue of accountability becomes very obvious. Somehow, when it comes down to the parliament and the government, it seems to be cloudy. So the question I want to start with first to address is, what is accountability? Since that's really what we will be looking at in the light of the Constitution, in the light of government and parliament. And that is basically two things. It's not one thing. Jamaica does okay with the first part. They don't do good with the second. First is holding somebody to account. And the second part of accountability is calling somebody to account. Now, holding somebody to account, calling first. Calling someone to account really just means that you are entitled to get an explanation for what has happened, what has not happened, and why. That's simple. And after getting that, you can then hold after you have called somebody to account. And holding to account simply means that if what was supposed to happen did not happen, then you can put measures in place to sanction, to punish that individual as a means to getting them to do what it is that you need to get done. And that's all that accountability is. So having said that, Silver has asked me to talk to you, and I have a PowerPoint I'm going to ask him to pull up that's going to talk about whether or not you and I as citizens have really been empowered by the Constitution of Jamaica to do what? As an employer, hold our employees to account, get information from them whenever we want to, be a part of the decisions that they are making, because frankly speaking, when you are the employer, when you own the assets, and when you're financing what is to be done, that is the normal and natural thing everywhere, save and except for when it comes on to the governance thing. So we just want to start off, especially for those, and I'm going to run through the first slides really quickly, but just in case there's anybody here who didn't make the first two, we want to be clear what is government, because that's what we're talking about. And as it says here, it's the means through which a society, the Jamaican society, organizes itself, how we determine who has the authority to make decisions on our behalf in order to achieve certain goals and to provide certain benefits that we need. And on the right, there are different types of government, different ways in which a society organizes itself and give authority. We are not a theocracy, that still exists. We're not a monarchy, though we are a constitutional monarchy. It's also a democracy, where people, as it says there, elect others to make decisions on their behalf. Next slide, thank you, Sil. Now, as it says there, we are governed under a system of a constitutional monarchy. And in truth and in fact, you're looking at our head of state. His name is Charles III, by the grace of God, King of Jamaica, and of his other realms and territories, head of the Commonwealth. That's the name of the king. And I just want to say to the listeners, Silburn, that I have been doing some workshops on budget, because we just came out of the budget process, where the most important thing that the parliament and the government has to do for the people of Jamaica is to look into the next 12 months to say, this is how I'm going to provide for you. And in discussing that process, I shared with them that there's this thing that looks very much like what's in the hand of King George that sits in the parliament called the mace. It's in your parliament, it's in every parliament in the Commonwealth. And I mentioned to them that if that mace, which represents the King of Jamaica, if that mace is not in the parliament, then the business of Jamaica can't start. And it's interesting to use the word independence when you recognize that unless the Governor General, which is the King's employee, signs that document called the budget, we can't spend any of our taxes. And unless that mace, which it looks like that thing in his hand, is present in the parliament, we can't conduct the affairs of the people of Jamaica. So I'm just trying to make it a little real there for folks that, you know, the influence nonetheless and the recognition of the authority of King Charles III is real. It's not just purely symbolic. Next slide. So I think we jumped one, but that's okay. I just want to start off by recognizing that it's okay. It probably worked on mine as an animation, but not on yours, Sil, but that's fine. So, so every Monday, this is a photo of the cabinet, where those whom we have elected as per our democracy and as per the Constitution, because the Constitution is what sets up and defines this cabinet and also indicates what their roles and responsibilities are. Now, every Monday they meet and they are making decisions on behalf of the people of Jamaica. Next slide. And on the next slide is the next space where you will find that decisions are also being made for us in the House of Representatives, in the Senate, oversight committees, in the Parliament of Jamaica, almost every day. These are activities while you and I are at work. Here are our representatives making decisions that affect the quality of our lives. Next slide. So the position that JAMP takes as to why accountability is so important regarding, in particular, our parliament and our representatives has to do with the impact that they have on the quality of our life. Every one of us here on this series, civic series, and everybody I think who listens to Silburn are concerned about governance in Jamaica, concerned about its development. You could be somewhere listening to music, right? Watching a sitcom. You're here because you care. JAM's position is that the MP's job is the most important job in Jamaica. Some of you say, no, Miss Calder, no, you're stretching it there, man. I say, no. I say every neurosurgeon depends on the quality decisions that are being made by the parliament and the government as it relates to the health sector. Can't do his job well without it. Every farmer, if good policies and good decisions are not being made for the Ministry of Agriculture and by them, the farmer will not thrive. He might manage, but he won't thrive. And every young business owner is the same. So my question here is, if you don't think it is true, you just have to think about whether you're in the UK or here in Jamaica, eventually watching this on YouTube. How many public goods and services did you utilize and depend on, since morning? Social services, road and infrastructure, all of them are there. And if they don't function, Silburn, trust me, the quality of your day or the quality of your business takes a nosedive. Next slide. Now, if they really are that important, it means that our ability to hold them to account, which is what? Calling them to account, getting explanations for those decisions that they're making for us, and then being able to hold them to account becomes very important. This was just a photo I wanted to share of in 1896. The local elite in Port Antonio were gathering. It's a wonderful photo. Um, one, one second, Sil. There's a problem. There's a,
That's okay. That's okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on the civics class, and with Miss Jeanette Calder, and for those on TikTok as well, Kenny and Brown, how are you? Alicia Reed and Timmy, thank you for coming on. Michelle, feel free to ask any questions, and for those also on TikTok, in regards to this, and Miss Jeanette Calder, who's here. Let's her back.
yeah, my apologies. Just a
That's
challenge
okay.
on the outside there. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, guys. My apologies. Right. So I think
No
I was
problem.
just making a point that I wanted it to be clear to folks, since election is really the way we get into accountability, that we're coming from a place where here in Portland on election day, only 5% of the people were able to have a say. We have moved significantly from that today, but where we want to go, and I think where Silburn wants us to go, is it's good enough now that we can all vote for the people who are going to make decisions for us. It has now become important, Silburn, that the way they make it allows us to hold them to account for the decisions that they're making. So let's run to the next slide to see what we have on. So a reminder for those who perhaps have only tuned in for the first time in the series, our Constitution provides two main things. It sets up government and it establishes the citizens' rights and freedoms. Who is a citizen? Rights and freedoms, structure of government, how to choose the government, powers are given to different parts of government. It defines the role and the responsibilities of civil servants, the role and the responsibilities of citizens, and ultimately, what is the procedure to change the Constitution? So therefore, what JAMP has been talking about and other civil society groups and the media about strengthening accountability in the Constitution itself says how we can go about doing that. Next slide. Now, this is a very, 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 very important slide that I'm going to pause on for a little while, Silburn. And I realized that none of the animations that I gave Silburn in my PowerPoint are coming up as animations. So we might run into a little bit of problem on some other slides because of that. But nonetheless, not with this one. And I want to start off. It would have highlighted for us first the front benches. This is a picture of Parliament. And we would have, I want to talk to you first about those that are faintly there in yellow called the front benchers. Now, this is a term that we have gotten from the UK, but it basically is, as you can clearly see, those who are sitting at the front. These are the members of cabinet. These are the ones that we say in the parliament form the government. So it's a very interesting animal called parliament. There's parliament, there's government, but there's also government in the parliament, right? These are the ministers with different portfolios and different responsibilities for different areas of our lives. Now, what we see on the other side, we don't call them front benchers, though they're sitting on the front. We call them the shadow cabinet because while those who are in the yellow form government, the ones referring to shadow cabinet on the other side of the aisle are in anticipation of one day becoming government again. So what they do is they are shadowing. So if you have a minister of finance on the other side, there is a shadow minister cabinet on the other side to hold that minister to account. Now, I just want to pause by saying this to everybody listening. You notice I didn't put the word opposition, Silburn. I put shadow cabinet. If there is one thing I would like to have struck out of the language, out of standing orders, out of everything pertaining to governance, especially as it relates to the parliament and accountability, is the word opposition. Why is it? It sets up the wrong signal in the minds of Jamaicans as to what we are paying them for. Now, let me be very, very clear, folks. We are paying the salaries of everybody that you're looking at there. They work for us. There is a role for the shadow cabinet, and it is not to oppose the government of Jamaica. It gives citizens this impression that, boy, if government come up with something good, the job of the shadow cabinet or the PNP is to get up and say, no, that can't work. Oppose, oppose. That's not it. But it certainly is there to hold them to account, to make sure that they are utilizing our taxes to the best value that we can extract from it, and to ensure the laws are being followed and that citizens' rights are being respected. We pay who we call the members of the People's National Party to do that. So I prefer to call them the shadow cabinet, which they are also called, because every member of the cabinet has another member in the, I don't want to say opposition, on the other side, who is listening and paying attention to speak out on behalf of the citizens, any concerns they may have. Now, the backbenchers, I'm going to say something, Silburn, about the backbenchers that's going to surprise, I think, most persons listening, because I worked in government, had to sit down and report to Parliament, and this is something I didn't know about the accountability role of the city, of the parliamentarians who are backbenchers. Now, again, the UK call them backbenchers because I'm sitting at the back. But hear me well. In the minds of almost every Jamaican I have ever met, and I would even go so far without any disrespect meant, in the minds of even some parliamentarians sitting in the House, the job of the opposition is to hold the government to account. The job of the opposition, the job of the PNP in this case, is to hold the cabinet to account. That is not true. It is actually the job of all backbenchers to hold the government to account. Hold on. Why is that a big thing then, Jeanette? Well, I'll tell you why. I'll break it down for you. Do you notice where the word backbenchers come? It come on the side of what we call the opposition, but there are backbenchers also on the side of what we call the government. So what Ms. Calder is saying to Jamaica, and what I'm saying to all those listening, is that it is the job of every government MP who does not form a part of the cabinet to hold the cabinet to account. Now, why do you think that surprised me maybe about 4 years ago when I discovered the silver? You know why? Because when I'm watching Parliament, I don't see that happen. Does anybody? Do I see Tova Hamilton? Do I see Morland Wilson? Do I see Crystal Lee? Do I see, Robert Miller? These are all government MP getting up and saying, hold on, the Prime Minister, hold on, that is not what I heard you promised the people of Jamaica. Have you ever heard that? I haven't heard it. It's very rare, though it happens. But this is why, as a people, we have to understand the rules and responsibilities around accountability, because it is equally the responsibility of the backbenchers on both sides to be holding to account the folks who are the front benchers who are in yellow right there. Now, if citizens knew that, I think we could better ask questions of the government MPs. What's going on? How come I not hear you do your work? How come I only hear the backbenchers then on the PNP side? And of course, in the past, it would have been true. Now, the other area of accountability there in the parliament is the media. The Constitution of Jamaica sets up gives a rights and freedoms to the media because they perform an extraordinary role in accountability. Right now, me and Silburn here talking. If it was a Monday, I would be here working hard on the job, and everybody, construction worker, baker, teacher, whoever. We don't have time to be paying attention to the employees we have making decisions on our behalf. So the Constitution of Jamaica gives the right to the media, which the government cannot, should not. It would be unconstitutional to prevent them access to the information they're asking, because they have to come back in a democracy and inform us, the people, of the decisions that the government and the parliament has made, so that if we have a problem as the owner of the assets, as their employers, as the people financing everything they do. If we have a problem, the media is there every morning when I open my newspaper to tell me what contracts the government has issued and what decisions they have made. So the media up there in the media box at the top is crucial to accountability. Now, I'm not going to get into it, but I think you guys have realized from the last couple of days that Jamaica dropped 2 points in the World Press Freedom.
Yeah.
Troubling, because we used to be up at the top 6. We're nowhere near there now. So that's another story. But the next spot in the discussion around accountability is the citizens. You see that section there that says citizens in the gallery? That is a space that is left there for us. Now, literally all 2.9 of us, million of us can hold up there, but it is there not just symbolically. You have a right to access the parliament, to hear what is happening, to act on what is happening, but not all of us can be there. But that space that is allocated for us is basically saying you have a right to be there, you have a right to know, and you should be present. Silburn, I don't think I've ever been in the parliament outside of the opening and see a real, what you could call, presence in the house. The good news is that the government has provided a budget now where we can just watch it from PBCJ, so it's not so bad. But that is basically just a snap of a photo sharing with you a little bit about the responsibilities for accountability in the parliament itself. Silburn, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I just put my finger up to say something here. So what I see with that picture there is how things should operate in a perfect sense, in a way, isn't it? The
And to a
citizens,
large
the
degree,
media, backbenchers,
right.
frontbenchers, if it work properly.
Right. And to some degree, it is working. But for example, when I said to you that the backbenchers on the government side don't hold the government to account, that certainly doesn't happen in Jamaica. The other thing about accountability that I want your listeners to grasp is that the Constitution, in setting up this arrangement, which we inherited from the UK, think about it, folks. You are in a parliament where decisions have to be made, and the very people who have executed let me put it a different way. Say we just completed the budget process, yeah? This is a decision the parliament makes about how we're going to provide for the Jamaican people for the next 12 months. Now, those decisions having been made by government, took it to parliament, parliament debated and approved it, good, the governor general signed it. Here is a responsibility that the parliament has that I'm not sure that most Jamaicans are aware of. They know about coming to the constituency, they know about passing laws, and that's the MP's job. But it is the job of every parliamentarian who is not a front bencher to, for the next 12 months, monitor government, watch government, to make sure that in executing that budget, they are doing it based on what's in the budget, the right amount. They are doing it according to the financial laws set up in Jamaica. For example, our Procurement Act. It is the job of the government backbenchers to make sure that the cabinet is doing it right, and it is the job of the opposition, you could call it the shadow cabinet and opposition. That is their job, to watch the government and to hold the government to account. Now, if that's the job of the parliament, it becomes a lot challenging based on the constitution, because right there in the parliament, who is supposed to be holding and watching government, is the very government itself. Now, if I'm going to set an agenda, Silburn, for parliament next Tuesday, who gets to set the agenda? Is not the backbenchers who are there to hold this government to account. It's not the shadow cabinet. It is actually who? The same government in the parliament who decides what is going to happen in parliament today. So think about it, Silburn. If I am in parliament and the folks there are there to hold me to account because I formed the government, those folks there who are ministers and members of cabinet, but is the same members of cabinet who set the agenda about what is to be discussed. Can you see the difficulty that backbenchers, whether on the government side or on the opposition, so to speak, side, would have a difficulty, since the agenda and the order paper and the decisions about what is going to happen in the House today are primarily in the hands of the same people who form the government. That is one of the anomalies in Jamaica's constitution, and it's not just Jamaica's alone. It's the same for most Commonwealth countries. But in this current discussion and season of constitutional reform, that is one of the things that citizens are saying have to change, because as long as the government is there and is almost in control of a parliament and is dominant in the parliament, it's almost impossible to hold them to account. But I do want to share with your listeners what are the mechanisms in the parliament by which your MP has been given power to hold the government to account. One of them is very simple in that it's called question time. And I don't think citizens know about question time, Silburn, because citizens in Jamaica have a bag of questions for government, But did they know that they can actually submit a question to their elected representative to then go to Parliament to represent their question to a minister that's in the House? People think all you have to do, Silburn, is call a talk show. Maybe they will come on and respond. Write a letter in the newspaper. Maybe they might choose to respond. But I don't think many citizens are aware of a question time, which is a mechanism that says any of the backbenchers, any of the shadow cabinet can ask and put a question to any of the government ministers on on any issue, and they are required and obligated to answer that question within a time frame. That's accountability. If citizens knew that, I think citizens would be counting on their member of parliament and bringing those issues to them. Another one of those are called ministerial statements. Every Tuesday in the House, those front benches as cabinet ministers have to get up and report to Jamaica on what they're doing on the different projects and programs. These are projects and programs and policies that affect our lives. How many of us are listening to be able to now ask a question that will be about holding them to account for it? That's one. There's a special one called Prime Minister Question Time, where a question can be put directly to the Prime Minister of Jamaica as opposed to the others. And according to the standing orders and the Constitution, Silburn, if it is considered a matter of national interest, the Prime Minister has to answer that within even a shorter time frame than those other questions. So I won't go into all of them today, but what I'm basically sharing is that there are mechanisms in the House designed to enable the backbenchers and the shadow cabinet to hold to account those who are front benchers. Now, here is where I wanna jump to really quickly before I run out of the time to talk on the accountability. Whereas the Constitution will talk about the structure of government, which is how the government is set up, the role of the cabinet as the executive, the role of the judiciary, and the role of the legislature. That's the three arms of government. One of the concerns in Jamaica today is that though it talks about setting them up, it's kind of a little bit weak on how to pull them down. And what I mean by pull them down is that if you needed to remove a parliamentarian, for example, or a prime minister from their position, once them get that job, typically in Jamaica, once you get that contract for 4 or 5 years, nobody can move you. That's not entirely true, Sil. You can remove a parliamentarian if they go crazy, if they are so sick that they actually cannot do the job. You can also remove a parliamentarian if you are aware that he has become bankrupt, because the responsibility to manage the finances of the country is paramount in the parliament. So if you have somebody that has gone bankrupt, hello, if you can't manage your own personal funds, then basically those who legislated the Constitution, so well, you can't manage the national. Another reason that you can actually be asked to leave the House is absenteeism. However, the extent to which, the length of how many times you would have to be absent before you are asked to leave the House, Silburn, it's almost impossible. You're going to have to be assessed within a 21-day period, and you would have had to have missed 6 consecutive sittings of that meeting called the House, 6 times in a row, and If you miss it 5 times in a row, but you come the 6th time, then you're good, Silburn. The problem is Parliament don't even sit 6 times in 21 days. So what it means is that it's almost impossible to hold to account any member of Parliament if they're simply not showing up to the house, to the office, to the workplace. JAMP can bear that out because we track what you call attendances for this particular meeting. And there are members of Parliament who have been to the House less than 40% of the time, Silburn, and their job is quite intact. So in terms of accountability, we don't want to just mention today the things that are there. We have to mention the things that should be there after 62 years of self-governing. And some of those are precisely that. How do I remove a parliamentarian for lack of performance, whether in the House or in the constituency? So citizens who say, boy, from the vote, we believe that the Constitution should have a very clear rule, like every workplace, that says, well, if you're not show up, man, you can't continue to get paid. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing in this day and age. I think it should have been there from day one, much more after 62 years that we still don't have something as simple as that. Another thing that the Prime Minister himself had promised in 2015 as an accountability mechanism is setting a term limit on a Prime Minister. That is one way of holding somebody to account. Simply saying, boss, you have served 1, 4, or 5 years, you get a second time, we're going to say it's somebody else's turn now. And another thing that the Prime Minister had actually shared as a means of holding MPs to account, or holding the legislature, the executive rather, to account, is setting a date by which the people of Jamaica are clear, this is the date on which I'm going to have to hire 63 public officials to put them in the House. We still don't have that as an accountability mechanism. And last, the matter of job descriptions. Now, that is the most basic fundamental accountability tool. And it is true to say that in the Constitution, it does speak to what are the roles and the responsibilities of the people that you're looking at here. But Silburn and viewers, it's in a very general, it's laid out in a very general way, not in a way in which you and I, as the owners, the employers, and the financiers of everything they're doing, not in a way that we can track them and know that, yes, this one is doing well and this one is doing not. This MP should get a doubling of his raise, but not this one. And that has become something that JAMP is now raising again with the Prime Minister, because 2 years ago, when we raised those salaries by double and triple, the Prime Minister did promise that this would be the accountability mechanism he would put in place immediately, to be followed by performance measurement and an accountability framework if they don't measure up in performance. We haven't received that, but that certainly would be a game changer, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about accountability in the Parliament, to be able to do what is normal and natural in every workplace, which is to reward people based on their performance and not based on red or orange. And it is also, finally, to say to people, when that MP comes to your gate in a couple of weeks to apply for the job of a parliamentarian, citizens, like every employer, should be able, Silburn, to look at a document and say, hold on there, I see that you're supposed to be reviewing financial reports from all them public companies that I own, which we do. Tell me something. You want the job, but what is it you know about financial reports? So if you get a financial report tomorrow from UDC, Exim Bank, Jamaica Mortgage Bank, which I own, you can read them. You would be able to spot a problem. No citizen in Jamaica can have that kind of intelligent conversation and be able to weigh between both candidates to determine, not on the basis of orange or green, but on the basis of competence. Who is it we want to go in there to represent us, and be able to hold them to account later on should they not perform? So those are the general comments, Silburn, that I would want to make on the issues of the Constitution, the role of the Parliament, some of the mechanisms that we have in place to hold them to account. But clearly, some of the mechanisms that we still don't have as a maturing democracy, even though they have been promised to us. And I will leave it like that and hope that as the questions come, we'll be able to talk about the rest some more.
Well, thank you so much for that, Ms. Calder. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions to want to submit, I've got a few which I said I was raring to go when you're talking about some things about the accountability and the back benches and the front benches, which I just want to juxtapose with what happened in the UK. But I just want to say what some guy in Toronto says. Parliament should be broadcast, simple as that. Jamaican citizen get sound bites of the goings on in the night, the CBM news. Can you address that? Because I believe there's a lot of broadcasts.
Yeah, I would love to. So I want to say to some guy in Toronto that when the idea of JAMP began in my head, which is around 2018, one of the things I wrote down is must lobby to government for all meetings of parliament to be broadcasted. Because at that time, Silburn, it was really only what you call the plenary, which is the general sitting of parliament. That's the only thing that was, I would say, religiously broadcasted. By the time JAMP was launched in 2019, the Ministry of Education was given a budget. That is who the Public Broadcasting Corporation of Jamaica sits under the Ministry of Education, and they got the funding to do what? Broadcast every meeting. So the difference between 2017 and now is tremendous. That is a government that I could say is demonstrating greater transparency, because some guy is right. The news is only, I'm sorry, without apology, the news is only interested for the most part in the more sensational stuff. Yeah. But citizens really want to follow the debate, follow the decisions, follow the process, and learn how Parliament works. They can now do it by going to PBCJ on YouTube, Public Broadcasting Corporation, and watch just about any committee or almost any and every sitting of Parliament. And I think that's a credit to the government.
Thanks. And I noticed something you said, I picked up. You keep saying this, if the citizens know. You kept saying, if the citizens know. So there's, and we talk about the Prime Minister's question time. We talk about all these different questions. If the citizens know, how will the citizens know about these things?
Well, somebody has got to teach them. That's how we know about everything. How do I know how to write? A teacher had to teach me. How do I know about this? I tell your listeners, they might be sitting there and say, boy, the lady sound like she know what she talk about, but me not go to school. She clearly did go UE. No. I'm a trained architect. I did not study public administration.
You're like the conservative. You're like the conservative leader here is that engineer. She's engineer.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yes, exactly. But as I said earlier in the introduction in the show, one of the things that spurred me to do JAMP was the question of a scandal in my country. And I said, boy, no man, somebody have to follow up these things to make sure, then fix these problems when they happen. And that is an idea. Did research, figure out a lot of what I'm saying is just by reading, folks. And here I am to share with you all that I've learned. So this is not formal education, Silburn. This is a citizen that said, I don't want to live nowhere else. And that is true. Have I lived in another country? Yes. And I have no qualm saying to folks, I lived in Europe, loved every minute of those 5 years. Life was easy, breezy, lemon, squeezy. But I love this country and I came back home. And so I have to figure out how it run in order to make the difference that I want for Jamaica. And that's reasonable.
I want to go on to the bit about the backbenchers and the responsibility of backbenchers, because you sort of set this stage whereby they should all form a part of the government structure and keeping the government accountable. But what you're alluding to is that is not what is happening from the backbenchers in Jamaica. And I agree, because in the UK, for argument's sake, we have seen successive prime ministers left the Conservative Party. We saw Liz Truss, we saw Boris Johnson, we saw Rishi Sunak, and all of them. But guess what? It was within the Conservative Party and the backbenchers that ousted them. So therefore, the party was, in a sense, being regulated within itself, in a sense. I mean to say, it wasn't the opposition pushing it. It was within the party. So what you're saying in Jamaica, you do not have that sort of thing whereby one party would be having
No, we're not at the level of where the UK is. And I think it might be fair to say I don't even expect to be there. That is not even the next step. That is a leap to get to what you just described.
yes.
Well, if I misunderstood Silver, let me know. But a situation where the prime minister is making decisions and his own party is saying, "No, man, this not gonna get us anywhere," and the very party that forms the government there, his cabinet, will vote and say, we have lost confidence in you. Now, that provision is in the Constitution of Jamaica, but it is not in the tradition. It's not in the culture as yet of the people of Jamaica. It is in the political culture
Yes.
of the UK. That's not there as yet. What
Mm.
I know to be true also is that your backbenchers can also hold your prime minister and your executive to account. You can tell me
Yes.
if that is happening. Now
That,
that
that is that is
Silver is
that
the
is
next
correct.
step. That is what Jamaicans need to see happening. Because let me make this clear. If I hadn't said it before, and I don't think I did, when a citizen, as we're about to see, steps forward
Mm.
as a candidate to become a representative in the House, the truth
Yes.
and in fact, and I love to remind citizens of this, the Constitution of Jamaica does not mention the word political party anywhere. The
Mm.
Constitution of Jamaica does not recognize a PNP, a JLP, a UPP, or NEP. It
Yes.
only recognizes a citizen stepping forward to say, I want to represent other citizens in the parliament. The only reason a PNP and a JLP come into this, is because when these candidates get up and say, boy, I want to run to represent, they sit back and say, you know, if I run on my own, that's going to make it harder. What if I got together with some other candidates and we run together? It will
Mm.
make my chances of winning probably stronger. All it is, Silburn, is that strategy. So these candidates came together to put a manifesto together. So rather than me one on my own saying, Jamaica, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do, all the candidates them say, all right, let us call ourselves a party and let
Yes.
us go to the country, not as one, but as a group. But the
Commit.
Constitution doesn't recognize the group. I just wanted to make that very clear because I think that's a powerful thing to be able to say to Jamaicans that any of us can get up on our own. It doesn't recognize a party. It asks a citizen to do so. So when that citizen goes into the house, the
Yes.
expectation of a constitution is that that citizen who the constituents voted for is going there not to represent a party because the
Mm.
constitution don't talk about that. That citizen who won his seat is going there to represent a constituency. But this is what has become bastardized, Silburn. They begin to vote along party lines. They begin to feel loyal to the group because what? Part of it is that, boy, me want one minister. And if
Yes.
me go end up and hold my prime minister to account, me not go ever turn prime minister. So the whole
Disloyalty
system
to be
gets, yeah,
that
so the whole
feeling of
system get
disloyalty.
corrupt. The system get corrupt. But I want citizens to understand that the constitution don't see green, don't see PNP. It only sees individual citizens there to represent your interest. And we have come a far way from that as the tradition. It's the party first, the party second, the party third, and then you come along.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight on Civics Masterclass with Civics and Accountability with Ms. Jeanette Calder, Executive Director, founder of Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal. And we're just wrapping up now. But I just want to bring in one more point, and this is the opposition. The word that you mentioned, which is so important to the psyche of Jamaicans, the opposition. When you mentioned
Yeah.
that the word opposition doesn't factor properly because people are seeing them against there's a fighting going on there when really and
Correct.
truly it should
Yeah.
be a working together for the
Yeah.
benefit of the best interest of the country.
Right. And to put a fine point on it, if you think of the folks listening, just think about your job.
Mm.
There's a supervisor, there are managers, and nobody has a difficulty understanding that my manager is there, Silver, to watch what me I do and make sure
Yeah.
some me I do it right. That is the job of the opposition, is to watch that's what the Constitution says their job is. And guess what, Sil? That is what every Jamaican listening is paying them to do. But nobody's gonna come into an office and think, why the manager report for me? That's their job if they think you're not doing what's best for the organization. So we have to begin to change the mindset of Jamaicans in looking at them that way. And we have to change the mindset of Jamaicans to see who they really are. You're an employer, you're the financier, you are the owner. So at the end of the day, without an opposition, the citizen's job, you are really the primary person to be holding government and parliament to account. Yeah.
Some guy in Toronto says a point here, which a lot of people says this, and I think you alluded to it. It's tough, but it's political suicide to vote against the party line.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. It rarely happens, but I have not. It's not about voting against. There are several things happening in the House where you can raise your voice of concern without voting against. I have seen, for example, and I kept that newspaper back in COVID when Mrs. Holness stood up in the House and chastised the Minister of Health. Huh? That is holding him to account, you know. She said, listen to me, man. Get your story straight, Minister. Because you come to the House last week and you tell me this. I go to my constituents, I tell them back, I come back this week, you tell me that. And she really, you know, said, listen to me, man. We have to get this thing right. That's not a vote against them, Silburn. But in the day-to-day management, you have to be able to say, hold on a minute. Member Warmington has done it. The Auditor General is there auditing everybody. Member Warmington gets up in the House and says, hold on, Minister of Finance. The Auditor General can audit herself. When you're going to audit her, boom. That is what I mean, Silburn. In the daily cut and thrust of the business of the people, you need to be able to say to a minister, come, step up. So I agree with him. The voting against the party is rare. But where do we start, guys? We start with those two examples where in the everyday you should be seeing them, telling them to pull up them socks. And when that becomes the practice, the next step, Silver, is the vote. And by the way, I know of one instance in Jamaica where somebody voted against the party. And up to now, the people, them no stop applause. So I want to say, and that was Portia Simpson Miller.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Right, who voted against her party to something to do with local government a couple of years ago. And the people of Jamaica were impressed. So I would say to MPs listening, yes, you might catch a little bit of fire from your party, but where the power lies with the people, you might actually win by going against the tradition and standing with the people. That's what I have seen. Have some courage, yeah?
Yeah, that is so very important. And we hope and trust that the whole accountability bit with the recall and the impeachment and all those bits will fall into play, because in the UK, as you see that election recently, there was this major upset by an MP who had a fight with one of his constituents. And as a result of that, he went to court and he was found guilty. It was a suspended sentence, but anyway, he stepped down. And in this recent local government election, they also had that by-election. The Labour Party had 15,000 majority. But Reform, that new party that came on the scene, won against Labour by 6 votes. 6 votes. But the key point is this, and as you mentioned, there are ways where MPs step down when things happen. And you say if they are senile, what about if they're very old? I don't know. So that is something there at the same time, you know. But it is a very interesting time. And before you go, just one last thing, because the whole purpose of this discussion is the education bit. That is why I like how you set this out, and I hope people share this video to let everybody know that this is important and they can hear some gem as to how they can be a part of the governance.
Correct.
Just like how that picture there, that is it, the citizens in the gallery. It is like in the football field, the audience, they're always up looking down directly and seeing. So the citizens in the gallery, the citizen play a fundamental role. So if you just elaborate in the end, how do the citizens really lay hold of their responsibility?
That's a good question. The self-education is gonna be hard for several. But JAMP is here, and
Yes.
this is precisely what we're here to do, is really to educate the whole nation. If you are not informed, folks, if you don't really understand how government works and parliament works, it's gonna be
Yes.
impossible. Now, I'm sitting here in my office, and tomorrow morning, two young ladies who are gonna come in as my researchers, for instance, I have to
Yes.
be very clear as to what their job is, but they have to be very clear about what their job is for this to work. I would say what is the next step, Silburn Sidial,
Yes.
is this: impressing upon the Prime Minister, who promised us 2 years ago, after that significant increase in the Parliament salary, he promised us, he says, Jamaica, I am immediately going to provide a job description. A job description is a
Yes.
fundamental to knowing what somebody is supposed to do. And without that, you can't hold them to account, Silburn. If I didn't have a job description, my board would
Yes.
find it hard to hold me to account. So as a next step, for the Jamaicans at home and the Jamaicans who are abroad, Taki, Kojo, Nani, Paul, Sam, all of them guys there couldn't access the Queen 9,000 miles away for the change. We have it easy. The Prime Minister is accessible.
Yes.
Social media. So the very next
Yes.
step I would say, Silburn, for the change we want in accountability is to just, within the next 3 minutes the show is up, or whenever you watch it, pick up social media, Twitter, Instagram, whichever one, and say PM, 7 words. You promised
Yes.
must get job descriptions before general elections, because
And
that is when we're going to need them to hire the public officials called MPs. That's the next best step, guys, and we should
and
take it. Yeah.
and I tell you what, because the Prime Minister is very regular on, well, I don't know if it is his minders or whatever like that, but he's always posting, and sometimes I post things underneath it
And he
as well,
responds.
and he responds. So therefore, it is very important.
Yes.
Tell me, who
So
is the guest here?
Silburn, I'm looking out for your post then, Silburn, since you know.
Well, I did one today. I'm going to go back to see if there's any response to it. Temiola on Instagram just said nothing changes or improve if you don't go against the grain sometimes. Though I
Absolutely.
understand the pressure to toe the line.
Absolutely. I love that.
And Michelle Clark says education.
Education.
Which
Power is in knowledge. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
yes.
Absolutely.
And the last one would be from some guy in Toronto, which is said Mrs. Calder is a very strong candidate for show MVG. I just learned what is MVG now, but most valuable guest.
I love it. Thank you, some guy. I'll show it to you up next time in Canada.
Well, Jeanette, I
That's
want to thank you so
encouraging.
much for coming
Yeah.
on. Thank you so
Yeah,
much
man.
for coming on, and it was very invaluable as usual. And you always show up
Yeah.
on the show at different times, and
Yeah.
we never have enough. There's so much more
True.
that can be
Never
done.
enough time. But I do enjoy your walks in the park. So keep
You
doing
know,
what you're doing. Eh? I look
as a matter of
forward
fact,
to them.
the walks are going to be much more important, much more exciting. You know why? Because I'm
Yeah.
going to start speaking to people in the park as to who they are.
Oh, wow. Well,
Because
Silburn, let me just say to the
yes,
listeners that this so-called simple thing that you're doing, is
yes,
about holding them to account, It's about holding our
yes,
leaders to account. So I'm just
yes.
saying that if you want an example, listeners, Silburn is just walking in the park and sharing his thoughts and sharing with us. That's powerful. So just to say that that is one way in which it can be done stress-free. Yeah.
Stress-free. I like that. Just easy and listening to the birds and just say, my thought is this. Prime Minister, you need to actually call the election, man. And I said, Prime Minister, no, I said it. You guys know I said it as a Prime Minister. You said you're going to
Yeah.
do impeachment. You said you're
I
going to
love
do.
it.
You said
I
you're
love
going
it.
to set a date. Why not
Yeah.
now?
And
that's easy.
the one thing I appreciate the most about the way in which you have this conversation, Mr. Sidial, it means a lot to me, is the respect that you show to the office of the Prime Minister. It almost
Yes.
I feel a little emotional about it. I feel a little when I said that a while ago, but it means a lot to me that when we advocate that we respect the office and we respect the man. And you have always done it, and I deeply appreciate it. And I wish some folks would take a chapter out of your book. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't tell him figure, whatever.
Yeah, man. You can hold somebody to account respectfully, and you show us how
Yes.
every week. Bless you for that.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Calder, and have a great evening. Enjoy the rest of the Sundays. I think it's now just after 3, so you still have some sun there, isn't it? We're in the dark
Dinner
now.
awaits. Rice and peas and chicken.
Oh no! What are you telling me?
With the coconut milk in there, Silburn.
Don't be like a friend of mine that sent me a picture that he's at Duns River Falls reading the newspaper and I have a red stripe next to him, and he always does it all the while. I said, thank you so much.
All right, I won't do that to you. Take care. God bless.
Thank you very much, Ms. Calder. Bye-bye. Have a good one. Thank you. Cheers. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining tonight. Very powerful discussion. Ms. Jeanette Calder is the Executive Director and founder of Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal. As you can see, the email, the website is going below there. You can go and check it out. It's a very powerful website as well, because you can follow up on MPs. You can check out on MPs. As a matter of fact, one of the things she told me is that you can also see MPs who have done good and you can actually say well done to them, not just negative things as well. The Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal designed digital tools to help citizens improve governance and accountability. What do we do when we live in a constitutional democracy and those we have elected and employed to act on our behalf operates in a matter that opposes the very tenets of the Constitution and the principles of our democracy? What do we do when our laws and Constitution have been abrogated by legislators in the very midst of invocation for those said laws to be honored? And next week, in next 2 weeks' time, I'll have another guest. I haven't decided who was yet, but I'll be continuing this discussion. Keep it very simple. Get different guests to speak and make it very educational. And most importantly, remember to like, remember to share this video, especially share the different ones. This is also going to be on podcast, which is on Spotify, Amazon Prime, and Amazon and RSS.com, so people can actually listen to it while they're driving or doing whatever they're doing as well. So try to keep it very simple and very powerful. So thank you very much, Michelle, some guy in Toronto. Thank you guys for your support very much, and everyone else, those on Instagram as well. Thank you so much, Temiola, Coley Conscious, Mags, Joe Barry, Kevin, very respect, Kevin. Thank you so much for coming on, and those on Facebook. So have a good evening. Enjoy the rest of the Sunday, and peace out, and may God bless you immensely. Bye-bye.